It was a gray Tuesday morning in Charlotte, North Carolina. The kind of morning where the sky couldn't decide whether to rain or just stay heavy and quiet. If you believe kindness still matters, stay until the end. And if this story moves you, like, comment, and share it with someone who needs the reminder. Denise Carter had been awake since 5:15 a.m. Her daughter, Zora, 7 years old, had a cough that wouldn't quit, and Denise spent 20 minutes rubbing menthol on her chest before finally getting her dressed for school. Breakfast was oatmeal with a spoon of honey, because the eggs needed to last until Saturday. Denise kissed Zora at the school gate, watched her walk in with her backpack bouncing, and only let her smile fall once her daughter was out of sight. 4 years earlier, Denise's husband, Marcus Carter, a Charlotte firefighter, had died pulling 2 children out of a burning apartment building. He hadn't made it out the third time he went back in. The department called it heroism. Denise called it the day her whole world changed shape. Since then, she had rebuilt herself piece by piece. She worked as an independent compliance auditor for nonprofit foundations, reviewing large fund transfers, verifying paperwork, making sure charitable money went exactly where it was supposed to go. It wasn't a flashy job. Most people had no idea what it even meant, but she was good at it, careful with it, and it paid enough to keep a roof over Zora's head. She drove a 14-year-old Honda with a cracked side mirror. Her coat was warm but faded at the elbows. She never bothered dressing the part because she'd learned long ago that looking successful and being taken seriously were 2 very different things, and she'd rather save her money than perform respectability for strangers. That morning, she wasn't at Piedmont Trust Bank for herself. She was there wearing 2 hats. First, to sort out a small issue on her personal checking account. Second, and this was the real reason to finalize a $58 million transfer for the Marcus Carter Community Health Fund, a foundation built in her late husband's name, now moving its endowment to a larger investment partner after 5 years of steady growth. She walked in shaking rain off her umbrella. Near the entrance, a young college student, a girl, maybe 19, wearing a backpack twice her size, dropped a stack of folders across the floor, papers scattered everywhere. "Let me help you with that," Denise said, kneeling down without a second thought. "Thank you so much," the girl said, red-faced. "I'm so clumsy today." "You're fine, sweetheart. We've all had mornings like this." At the front desk stood Rachel Whitmore, the branch manager, 36 years old, sharp suits, a spotless record of hitting sales quotas, and a growing pile of pressure from corporate after the branch missed its last 2 quarterly targets. Rachel had started treating every interaction like a transaction to be sped through rather than a person to be heard. She glanced up as Denise approached an older coat, tired eyes, a plain folder tucked under one arm, and made her decision before Denise even opened her mouth. "Can I help you?" Rachel asked, already looking past her toward the line. "Yes, actually 2 things," Denise said. "There's a fee on my personal account I'd like reviewed, and I have an institutional appointment scheduled for 10:15. "Let's start with the fee," Rachel said flatly. She typed for a moment. "You were charged a $17 maintenance fee last week. I don't believe my account should have qualified for that fee. Could someone double-check? It's correct as charged." "I understand it might be small," Denise said gently, "but I'd still like it looked into." Rachel exhaled audibly, loud enough for the woman behind Denise to notice. "Ma'am, we really can't spend time debating $17 every time someone walks in." "I'm not debating. I'm asking for it to be verified." "It has been." Denise kept her voice even. "Then, I'd like to move on to my second matter, the institutional transfer." Rachel didn't look up. "I don't see any appointment under your name." "It would be listed under the Marcus Carter Community Health Fund," Rachel typed half-heartedly, searching only personal accounts, and shrugged. "Nothing's showing. You'll need to reschedule. I drove 40 minutes for this appointment." "I'm sorry," Rachel said, in a tone that made it clear she wasn't. Denise opened her folder and slid a sealed authorization packet across the counter, the foundation's silver emblem catching the light. "If you could just glance at the first page." Rachel didn't touch it. Instead, with a small tired laugh, she said, loud enough for 3 people in line to hear, "If $17 is already a struggle, I find it hard to believe we're discussing anything close to a real institutional transfer." The words landed like a slap. A man in line chuckled under his breath. The girl with the backpack, still standing nearby waiting for a teller, looked mortified on Denise's behalf. Denise didn't raise her voice. She simply closed her folder, nodded once, and said quietly, "Thank you for your time." She walked to the seating area by the windows, sat down, and pulled out her phone. Rain slid down the tall windows in uneven lines as Denise scrolled to a single contact. Diane Coleman, Executive Vice President of Institutional Services, Piedmont Trust Bank. Diane had personally overseen 4 months of planning for this transfer, working directly with the Foundation's board, a board made up largely of families whose children had once been treated in hospitals the fund helped support. Diane picked up on the second ring. "Denise, everything on track for this morning?" "There's been some confusion at the branch," Denise said calmly. "No one seems aware of the appointment." A pause. "They don't have it on record?" "No. And I wasn't able to present the authorization packet." Diane's tone sharpened instantly. "Please don't leave. I'm coming to you personally." "I don't want to make a scene, Diane." "You're not making one. Somebody already did." Diane's voice had gone cold and precise. "Stay exactly where you are." Denise hung up and looked out at the rain. She wasn't angry. Not really. She was tired. Tired in the specific way that comes from being underestimated so many times that it stops being surprising and starts being routine. Across the lobby, Rachel had already moved on to her next customer. All smiles and offers of fresh coffee, as though the last 5 minutes had never happened. The contrast wasn't lost on the girl with the backpack, who kept glancing between Rachel's cheerful new customer service voice and the quiet woman sitting by the window. 9 minutes later, the lobby's rhythm changed. 2 black SUVs pulled up outside. A security guard straightened his jacket. A teller whispered, "Is that corporate?" The doors opened. 2 members of bank security entered first, followed by Diane Coleman, carrying a leather folio, and beside her, Gregory Hale, the regional director for the Carolinas. Every employee in the branch recognized them immediately. Rachel's confident expression flickered and dropped. Gregory scanned the lobby. "Where's Mrs. Carter?" Denise stood. "I'm here." Diane crossed the lobby quickly and reached for both of Denise's hands. "Mrs. Carter, I am so deeply sorry." "It's all right," Denise said. "There was a misunderstanding. The Foundation board is already waiting on the video call," Diane said. "They've been ready for 20 minutes. "Then let's not keep them any longer," Denise replied. Before they walked toward the conference room, Denise paused. "There is one more thing." Diane looked at her, already sensing what was coming. "The $17 fee." Denise almost smiled. "You heard that too. You mentioned it on the phone." Diane's expression softened. "It was never about the money, was it?" "No," Denise said quietly. "It was about whether the rules apply the same way to everyone who walks through that door." "They should," Diane said. "They will." Gregory made a note in his folder without a word. Behind them, an elderly customer whispered to the person next to her, "Didn't that manager just tell her this maybe wasn't the right bank for her?" Several heads nodded. Rachel, standing frozen near the teller line, heard every word and remembered, with sudden clarity, everything she had said 15 minutes earlier. The conference room smelled like fresh coffee and printer toner. Legal representatives from the receiving investment firm joined by video call. Denise opened her folder and laid out notarized trustee documents, board resolutions, compliance certifications, and wiring instructions, every page organized with the precision of someone who had done this dozens of times before. Diane looked over the paperwork and let out a small, impressed laugh. "In 20 years, I've rarely seen documentation this clean." "I've had a lot of practice," Denise said simply. It was Gregory who finally asked the question, sitting quietly in the room. "Mrs. Carter, the fund. Marcus Carter, Community Health Fund. Any relation?" Denise looked down at the folder for a moment before answering. "My husband. He was a firefighter here in Charlotte. He died pulling 2 kids out of a fire 5 years ago. The department and a group of families he'd helped over the years started the fund in his name the following year. I've managed its compliance and growth ever since." The room went quiet. Diane's eyes softened. Even the video call feed seemed to pause. "I didn't know that," Diane said gently. "Most people don't," Denise said. "I don't lead with it. I just do the work." For the next 40 minutes, the room moved efficiently, reviewing figures, confirming wire details, verifying signatures. When the final authorization appeared on screen, Gregory extended his hand. "Congratulations, Mrs. Carter. The transfer of $58 million has been completed." Denise shook his hand, her expression calm rather than triumphant. "Thank you for your help." There was no celebration, because to Denise, it was never really about the number. It was about hospitals still running, families still supported, and a promise she'd made to keep her husband's name meaning something more than a memory. Outside the conference room, an entirely different meeting had already begun. Rachel sat across from Gregory as a compliance officer pulled up appointment logs, security footage, and internal complaint records. "No one's in trouble because of a transaction," Gregory said evenly. Rachel nodded, hopeful. "This is about conduct," he continued, sliding 2 printed pages across the table. "The Carter Fund appointment was scheduled 8 days ago. You searched only personal accounts. You declined to review official documentation when it was presented. You made a public comment about a customer's financial situation in front of other clients." Rachel's voice was barely a whisper. "I made a mistake." "Yes," Gregory said. "But the mistake wasn't a scheduling error. It was deciding what a person deserved before you knew anything about them." Rachel stared at the table, unable to argue, because she knew even before he said it that he was right. Nearly an hour later, Denise stepped back into the lobby carrying her folder, the transfer complete. A young teller, the same one who had stayed quiet earlier, hurried over. "I'm really sorry about what happened," she said. "I should have said something." Denise smiled gently. "You don't owe me an apology, sweetheart. I still feel bad. Sometimes it's hard to speak up when your manager is standing right there," Denise said. "Just remember, everyone who walks through those doors is carrying something you can't see." Across the lobby, Rachel emerged from the back office, her composure gone. Her eyes met Denise's, and for a long moment, neither woman spoke. Finally, Rachel walked over. "I owe you an apology. A real one." "You don't have to do this here," Denise said. "I do," Rachel said, her voice shaking slightly. "I judged you before I even listened to you. I embarrassed you in front of strangers. I treated $17 like it told me everything about who you were." "It wasn't about the money," Denise said quietly. "I know that now," Rachel said. "It was about being heard, and I didn't give you that." Denise studied her for a moment, then said simply, "I hope you remember this not just today, but next month and next year, when it's easy to forget." She offered Rachel a small, genuine smile, then walked toward the exit. Rachel had braced herself for anger. The quiet grace was somehow harder to carry. 2 weeks later, Piedmont Trust Bank completed its internal review. Rachel's employment was terminated not because of the size of the transfer, and not because the foundation had every right to move its own money. She lost her position because the investigation uncovered a documented pattern: dismissive treatment of certain customers, repeated failure to escalate legitimate requests, and multiple prior complaints that had quietly piled up over the years without consequence. Denise's case was simply the one that finally forced the bank to look. It wasn't sudden. It was the result of many small choices, finally catching up all at once. Months passed. Charlotte moved through a mild winter into an early spring. Zora's cough disappeared with the warmer weather, and she finished 2nd grade with a report card full of stars and a request to plant tomatoes in the small backyard of their rental home. One Saturday morning, tying green string around a young tomato plant, Zora looked up at her mother. "Mom, why do you always help strangers, even when they're rude to you?" Denise smiled, brushing dirt from her hands. "Because someone helped me once, when I really needed it." "When?" "The month after your daddy passed. I was standing in a grocery store trying to figure out what I could afford, and a stranger behind me quietly paid for everything before I could stop him. I never even got his name." Zora thought about that for a moment. "So that's why you're nice to people even when they're not nice to you?" "Partly," Denise said. "And because kindness doesn't disappear when someone doesn't return it. It just moves on to the next person who needs it." "I like that," Zora said. "So do I." A few months later, a handwritten letter arrived at Denise's small rental home. The return name surprised her: Rachel Whitmore. In it, Rachel explained that losing her job had forced her to slow down for the first time in over a decade. She had started volunteering at a community financial literacy center in East Charlotte, helping families, many of them from neighborhoods she used to overlook, understand banking, credit, and their own financial rights. Near the end of the letter, she wrote, You probably don't remember every word you said that day, but I remember all of mine. You reminded me that respect can't depend on someone's bank balance, their coat, or their car. Thank you for not answering my pride with anger. I'm trying to be someone worth forgiving. Denise read the letter twice, folded it carefully, and placed it inside the same worn folder that had started everything 6 months earlier, not as a trophy over someone else's failure, but as proof that people really can change after their worst moment, if they're willing to look at it honestly. That fall, the Marcus Carter Community Health Fund opened its newest project, a scholarship program for children of first responders, funded in part by the very endowment Denise had fought to protect that rainy Tuesday morning. The first scholarship recipient was the same girl who had dropped her folder of papers in the bank lobby months earlier, now a nursing student, and, as it turned out, the daughter of a paramedic who had worked alongside Marcus years before. If this story meant something to you, share it with someone who still believes kindness matters. And remember, sometimes life doesn't change because of $58 million. Sometimes it changes because someone finally learns that every person walking through the door deserves the same respect, whether they're asking about $17 or entrusted with millions. That lesson costs nothing, but it's worth more than any number printed on a bank statement.